I never thought a piece of paper could change everything. But that's exactly what happened when I found the letter tucked inside my grandmother's old photo album. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon, and I was helping her organize decades of memories in her attic when it slipped out, a faded envelope with my name written on it in her elegant handwriting. My name is Zoe, and until that moment, I thought I understood my place in our family. I was wrong. What's this, Grandma Evelyn? I held up the envelope, watching her face carefully. The way her expression shifted told me this wasn't just another forgotten birthday card. "Oh dear," she said softly, setting down the stack of photos she'd been sorting. "I suppose you were bound to find that eventually." The letter was dated 3 years ago, right around the time my brother Ethan got engaged. I unfolded it, the paper crinkling beneath my trembling fingers. "Dearest Zoe," it began, "there are things you need to know about your parents' choices, particularly regarding your future. While they've set aside a considerable sum for Ethan's wedding and his future endeavors, I've discovered they've made no such provisions for you. This isn't right, and it's not your fault." My stomach dropped. I looked up at my grandmother, who was watching me with a mixture of sadness and determination in her eyes. "Keep reading," she encouraged quietly. "The money that was meant for your college fund, money I specifically set aside for you when you were born, has been redirected. Your father claims it's temporary, but I know better. There's more to this story than they're telling, and I fear it goes beyond simple favoritism." The words blurred as tears welled up in my eyes. I thought about all the times my mother had brushed off conversations about my future, how she changed the subject whenever I brought up college applications. Meanwhile, Ethan's wedding last summer had been an extravagant affair that had our whole town talking for months. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Grandma Evelyn reached across the space between us and took my hand. "Because you weren't ready then. But now, at 17, you're old enough to understand, and strong enough to do something about it." "Do what exactly?" I folded the letter carefully, trying to process what this meant. "That's up to you, sweetheart. But there's something else you should know." She hesitated, glancing toward the attic window. "Your father's explanation about where that money went. It doesn't add up. I've been doing some digging, and what I've found." The sound of car doors slamming interrupted her. Through the dusty window, I could see my parents pulling into the driveway. My mother's perfectly coiffed hair caught the sunlight as she stepped out, already calling my name. "Zoe, we need to get home. The Hendersons are coming over for dinner, and I need you to help set up." I looked at my grandmother, panic rising in my chest. "Assure you. For now, nothing." She tucked the letter into my jacket pocket. "Act normal. But come see me tomorrow after school. There's more you need to know, and we need to be careful about how we handle this." As I headed downstairs to meet my mother, my mind was racing. The perfect family image she worked so hard to maintain suddenly felt like a house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest breeze. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I wanted to help keep it standing. "There you are." My mother's voice carried that familiar note of controlled irritation. "What were you doing up there all this time?" I forced a smile, feeling the weight of the letter in my pocket. "Just helping Grandma with some old photos." "Well, hurry up. We have appearances to maintain." If she only knew how much those words suddenly meant to me. Because now I understood, maintaining appearances was all that mattered to her, even at the cost of her daughter's future. And that realization changed everything. The Hendersons' visit was exactly what you'd expect. My mother fussing over perfectly arranged appetizers while my father talked business with Mr. Henderson. I couldn't stop thinking about the letter burning a hole in my jacket pocket, hanging in the mudroom. "And how's Ethan doing at his new job?" Mrs. Henderson asked, making my mother beam with pride. "Oh, he's already being considered for a promotion. The youngest account manager they've ever had." My mother's voice dripped with satisfaction. "We always knew he was destined for great things." I stabbed at my salad, pushing around a cherry tomato. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about college applications." "Did you hear Ethan's thinking of buying a house?" she continued, completely ignoring me. "In that lovely new development near the country club." My father finally looked up from his conversation. "Speaking of houses, we should tell them about the renovation plans, Linda." My fork clattered against my plate. "Renovation plans? What about my college fund?" The room went silent. My mother's smile froze, while my father suddenly became very interested in his water glass. Zoe, my mother said through clenched teeth, we can discuss this later. No, I said, surprising myself with my steadiness. I think we should discuss it now. Where's my college fund? Mrs. Henderson shifted uncomfortably in her chair. My mother's face flushed red. I think we should be going, Mr. Henderson said, standing up. Linda, Greg, thank you for dinner. After they left, my mother rounded on me. How dare you embarrass us like that? What's gotten into you? What's gotten into me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I just found out you've spent my entire future on Ethan's wedding and now house renovations? That's not... My father started, but I cut him off. Not what, Dad? Not true. Because Grandma Evelyn seems to think differently. My mother's eyes narrowed. You've been talking to her about our family business? Someone had to tell me the truth. I was shouting now, years of being overlooked pouring out. Did you think I wouldn't notice? That I'd just quietly accept having no future while you throw money at Ethan? Your brother has earned everything he's gotten, my mother snapped. He works hard. He makes connections. He understands the importance of maintaining our family's position. Our position? I gestured around our perfectly decorated dining room. Is that all you care about? How things look? Enough. My father's voice boomed, making us both jump. Zoe, go to your room. We'll discuss this when everyone's calmer. There's nothing to discuss, I said, pushing back from the table. You've made your choices pretty clear. As I headed for the stairs, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Mom says you're causing drama again. Grow up, sis. I typed back, how's that promotion coming along? The one you told Mom about 3 months ago. His response was immediate. Don't you dare. I smiled, feeling a strange sense of power. My perfect brother wasn't so perfect after all. I'd overheard him drunk dialing his ex last week, crying about how he was about to be fired. But, of course, our parents didn't know that. In my room, I pulled out the letter again, reading it for the 10th time. There was something else here, something bigger than just favoritism. Grandma Evelyn's words about my father's explanation not adding up nagged at me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Grandma Evelyn. Are you okay? Remember, tomorrow after school. There's more you need to know. I heard my parents arguing downstairs, their voices carrying through the heating vent. We have to tell her something, Linda. We tell her nothing. She's just being dramatic. Once the renovations are done and we host the charity gala, everything will be fine. And when she can't go to college, when she figures out what really happened to the money, she won't. No one will. We've worked too hard to maintain this life, Greg. I won't let her ruin everything. I recorded their conversation on my phone, my hands shaking. Whatever they were hiding, whatever they'd done with my future, I was going to find out. And when I did, maintaining appearances would be the least of their worries. I barely slept that night, and the next day crawled by until I could finally get to Grandma Evelyn's house. When I arrived, I found her in her study, surrounded by stacks of papers and old financial documents. Lock the door, she said without looking up. I'd never seen her so serious. What's going on, Grandma? I dropped my backpack and sat across from her desk. She slid a folder toward me. Your father came to me 5 years ago, asking to borrow against your college fund. He said it was temporary, just until some investments paid off. She paused, her hands trembling slightly. I should have known better. Inside the folder were bank statements, transfer records, and a handwritten agreement between my father and grandmother. But what caught my eye was a newspaper clipping dated 3 years ago. Local investment firm under investigation for fraud. Dad worked there, I whispered, pieces starting to click into place. He did more than work there, Zoe. He was involved in the fraud. The investigation was quietly settled, but it cost him everything, including your future. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Dad's looking for his old work files. Did you take anything from his office? I ignored it, my heart pounding. The renovation money. Isn't for renovations, Grandma Evelyn confirmed. Your parents are underwater on the mortgage. They're trying to sell before the bank forecloses. The perfect family image shattered completely. And Ethan's wedding? His new house. Smoke and mirrors. Your brother's about to lose his job, but your mother's too proud to admit any of this. She reached for my hand. There's something else. Your father. The study door rattled. Mom? Are you in there? My father's voice sent ice through my veins. Grandma Evelyn quickly swept the papers into a drawer. Just a minute, Greg. She turned to me, speaking rapidly. There's a USB drive in my bedroom, top drawer of my jewelry box. Get it while I distract him. It has everything you need to know. I slipped out through the connecting door to her bedroom, just as she opened the study. My father's voice drifted through the wall. Is Zoe here? Her car's outside. She was, but she left something at school. She'll be back soon. I found the USB drive buried under vintage brooches and quickly pocketed it. Through the crack in the door, I could see my father pacing. Did you tell her anything? About what, Greg? About how you gambled away her future. Or about the other thing? Mother, please. Don't mother me. You made your choices. Now Zoe gets to make hers. I heard drawers opening in the study. Where are the documents? Safe, Grandma Evelyn said firmly. Where you can't destroy them like you did everything else. My phone buzzed again. This time from my mother. Come home immediately. We need to talk about your behavior. Another text followed. Your father knows you took something from his office. Return it now, and we'll forget this happened. But I hadn't taken anything yet. They were scared of what I might find, which meant there was definitely something to find. I heard my father's footsteps heading toward the bedroom. Heart racing, I slipped into the ensuite bathroom, then out through its second door into the hallway. As I crept down the stairs, I heard him calling my name. Zoe? I know you're here somewhere. My grandmother's voice rang out, sharp and clear. Leave her alone, Greg. Haven't you done enough damage? I made it to my car, hands shaking as I started the engine. In my rearview mirror, I saw my father emerge from the house, phone to his ear, probably calling my mother. The USB drive felt heavy in my pocket as I drove away. Whatever was on it had my father spooked enough to come looking for it. And now I had something they wanted, leverage. My phone kept buzzing with texts and calls, but I ignored them all. Instead, I pulled into the library parking lot and took out my laptop. It was time to find out what other secrets my family was hiding and why they were so desperate to keep me from discovering the truth. The files on the USB drive made my stomach turn. Bank statements, emails, and documents revealed a web of lies stretching back years. My father hadn't just been involved in the investment fraud, he'd orchestrated it. And the victims? Mostly elderly clients who'd trusted him with their life savings, including my grandmother. My hands shook as I scrolled through an email thread between my parents from 3 years ago. Evelyn knows too much. We need to handle this carefully. Dad, just keep her happy. The wedding will distract everyone. Mom. The library's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I connected more dots. My brother's lavish wedding, the house renovations, even his supposed new job, all elaborate distractions to keep people from looking too closely at our family's finances. My phone lit up with a text from Ethan. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. Come home and we can fix this. I typed back, fix what? The fraud? Or just the appearance of it? His response came quickly. You don't understand what's at stake. But I did. I understood perfectly now. The library door opened, and I quickly closed my laptop. My mother walked in, scanning the room until she spotted me. Her heels clicked against the floor as she approached, drawing disapproving looks from other patrons. Get your things, she whispered. We're going home. I didn't move. Why? So you can help Dad hide more evidence. Her perfectly composed face cracked slightly. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Your father stole from his own mother-in-law? I kept my voice low but steady. Used my college fund to cover his tracks? She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging in. There are people watching us, Zoe. Important people. If this gets out. You mean if people find out we're not actually perfect? I pulled away from her grip. That's what really scares you, isn't it? Not what Dad did, but what the neighbors might think. You ungrateful little, she caught herself, forcing a smile as someone walked past. Your father made mistakes, yes. But everything he did for this family. No, I said, standing up. He did it for himself. And you helped him. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Grandma Evelyn. Don't go home. Come to me. It's time you knew everything. My mother saw the message. Your grandmother is manipulating you. She's bitter because Dad stole her retirement? I shouldered my backpack. Or because you helped him cover it up? If you leave now, she hissed, don't bother coming back. I looked at her, really looked at her. The expensive clothes, the perfect makeup, the desperate need to maintain appearances. It all seemed so hollow now. Okay, I said simply and walked away. Zoe, she called after me, loud enough to make people turn. Zoe, stop this right now. But I kept walking. In my car, I found more messages from Ethan. Mom's freaking out. Dad's talking about leaving town. Whatever Grandma told you, there's more to the story. I started the engine, then hesitated. One final message popped up, this one from my father. I can explain everything. Meet me at the country club. Just you and me. No police. Police? I hadn't even thought about that yet. But now that he mentioned it, I pulled out of the parking lot, my mind racing. The country club was in the opposite direction from Grandma Evelyn's house. Dad was probably there already, waiting to charm or threaten me into silence. Mom was probably calling everyone in her social circle, spinning some story about my rebellious phase. And Ethan? For the first time, I wondered how much he really knew. How long he'd been helping them maintain their perfect family facade. I turned toward Grandma Evelyn's house, but not before making a quick stop. Those files needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere my family couldn't reach them. Because now I understood, this wasn't just about my future anymore. It was about justice for everyone they'd hurt along the way. I arrived at Grandma Evelyn's house to find Ethan's car already in the driveway. My stomach dropped. He'd beaten me here. Through the living room window, I could see him gesturing animatedly while Grandma sat calmly in her armchair, arms crossed. Taking a deep breath, I walked in through the unlocked door. Just need to make this go away, Ethan was saying. We can figure something out that works for everyone. Like you figured something out for all those retirees Dad swindled? I asked, making him spin around. Zoe. His usual confident smile looked strained. You don't understand what's happening here. I understand perfectly. I pulled out my phone, showing him the recording from the USB drive. Want to hear Dad explain to his business partner how they could redistribute Grandma's retirement fund? Ethan's face went pale. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is what's on it. I turned to Grandma Evelyn. Did you know Ethan was helping them cover it up? Of course I knew, she said quietly. Just like I knew your father was planning to leave the country tonight. That hit me like a punch to the gut. What? He's already gone, hasn't he? She asked Ethan, who wouldn't meet her eyes. That's why you're here, damage control. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Your father loves you. Remember that when you hear what people say about him. You knew, I said to Ethan, pieces clicking into place. You knew all along. The fake job, the wedding expenses, everything. It was all to help Dad hide the money. I was protecting our family, he snapped. Someone had to, and you were too busy feeling sorry for yourself to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture? Grandma Evelyn stood up, her voice sharp. The bigger picture is that your father stole from people who trusted him. People who lost everything while you had your fancy wedding and your mother planned her charity galas. My phone kept buzzing. Texts from Mom about family loyalty, about keeping secrets, about appearances. I turned it off. What do you want? Ethan asked me, his voice low. Money? I can get you money for college. Just delete those files and forget about all of this. I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. You still don't get it. This isn't about money anymore. Then what is it about? He threw up his hands. Revenge? You want to destroy our family because Mom and Dad played favorites. No, Grandma Evelyn answered for me. It's about justice. For everyone your father hurt. Including your sister. Ethan's phone rang, Mom's ringtone. He ignored it. If those files get out, we lose everything. The house, our reputation, everything Mom and Dad worked for. You mean stole for, I corrected. Fine, he shouted. Yes, Dad stole the money. Yes, I helped cover it up. Yes, Mom spent your college fund on my wedding to keep up appearances. Is that what you wanted to hear? The front door opened. Mom stood there, mascara smeared from crying. Zoe, bless. Whatever you're thinking of doing. I already did it, I said quietly. I sent copies of everything to the police. And the newspapers. And Dad's old clients. The color drained from her face. You didn't. I did. Abota no rago. My voice was steady despite my shaking hands. Right after I found out Dad was planning to run, Ethan lunged for my phone, but Grandma Evelyn stepped between us. It's done, she said firmly. The truth is out. Now we all have to live with it. Mom sank into a chair, her perfect posture finally breaking. How could you do this to us? How could you do this to me? I countered. To Grandma? To all those people who trusted Dad. The sound of police sirens in the distance made Ethan curse. Mom started crying in earnest. But all I felt was a strange sense of peace. I'm staying here with Grandma, I announced. You two can go home and wait for the police. Or run like Dad did. Your choice. As they left, Mom still crying, Ethan silent for once, Grandma Evelyn squeezed my hand. Are you okay? I watched through the window as their cars pulled away. No, I admitted. But I will be. The news broke faster than I expected. By morning, our family's face was plastered across every local news site. Prominent financial advisor flees country amid fraud allegations. Below the headlines were photos from Ethan's wedding, our perfect family smile now looking more like a grimace. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Former family friends, reporters, even Dad's old clients wanting to know if I knew where he'd hidden their money. I didn't have any answers for them. You should eat something, Grandma Evelyn said, setting a plate of toast beside me. I'd been staring at my laptop for hours, watching our family's carefully constructed image crumble in real time. Ethan lost his job, I said, scrolling through another news article. Mom's being questioned by the police. They froze all their accounts. Good. Is it? I looked up at her. I wanted justice, but now, people are saying horrible things about us online. Former friends are calling us criminals. Even people who weren't involved are suffering. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Ethan on the porch, looking nothing like the golden child I grew up with. His designer clothes were wrinkled, his hair uncombed. I'll handle this, Grandma Evelyn said, but I stopped her. No, I need to. When I opened the door, Ethan didn't wait for an invitation. They're selling the house, he blurted out. Mom's being evicted. All my accounts are frozen. I can't even buy groceries. Welcome to my world, I said, but the satisfaction I'd expected to feel didn't come. Is that what you wanted? His voice cracked. To destroy everything? You destroyed it yourselves. I just exposerat trut. Det trot. He laughed bitterly. The truth is Dad's gone. Mom's having a breakdown. Our family name is ruined. And for what? So you could get revenge. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a news alert. My heart stopped when I saw the headline, breaking, Greg Caldwell found dead in Mexico hotel room. The world tilted sideways. Ethan grabbed my phone, his face draining of color as he read. Apparent suicide, he whispered. He left a note. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wanted justice, not this. Are you happy now? Ethan's voice was hollow. You got what you wanted. Dad's dead, Mom's probably going to jail, and I'm sleeping in my car because they froze my accounts. You didn't. The word stuck in my throat. I never meant. But you did it anyway. He tossed my phone back to me. Congratulations, Zoe. You're not the forgotten child anymore. You're the one who destroyed the Caldwell family. He left before I could respond, the door slamming behind him. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out. Grandma Evelyn appeared beside me, her face grave. This isn't your fault, isn't it? My voice sounded strange, distant. I wanted them to pay for what they did to us. But now Dad's dead, Mom's facing charges, and Ethan's homeless. How is that justice? Your father made his choices long before you exposed them, she said firmly. What happened after is on him, not you. But as I sat there, reading the news coverage of my father's death, I wasn't so sure. The revenge I'd wanted now felt hollow, tainted. I'd won, but at what cost? My phone lit up with another call, Mom's number. Her contact photo showed us at Ethan's wedding, both smiling, both pretending everything was perfect. I let it ring. What do I do now? I asked Grandma Evelyn, feeling more lost than ever. She didn't answer immediately, and when she did, her words weren't what I expected. Sometimes, destroying something broken is the only way to rebuild it properly. But as police sirens wailed in the distance, heading toward what used to be my home, I wondered if anything could ever be rebuilt from these ashes. And more importantly, if it should be. A week after Dad's death, I found myself standing in our old house, watching Mom pack up her designer clothes for court-ordered liquidation. The grand staircase where we'd taken so many perfect family photos now felt like a monument to lies. "They're letting me keep one suitcase," she said, not looking at me. "Everything else goes to the victims' fund." I picked up a framed photo from her dresser, Ethan's graduation. "Where is he?" "Living in his car, last I heard." She folded a silk blouse with trembling hands. "Though he won't answer my calls anymore either." "Mom, don't." She finally turned to face me. "Don't pretend you care now. You got what you wanted. We're ruined. Your father's dead. Justice served, right?" Before I could respond, the front door slammed. Ethan's voice echoed up the stairs. "Mom, you need to see this." He burst into the room, waving papers. His eyes narrowed when he saw me. "What's she doing here? What's wrong?" Mom asked. "Dad's suicide note?" "It wasn't suicide." He thrust the papers at us. "The police found evidence in his hotel room. He was murdered." The world tilted sideways. "What?" "Someone followed him to Mexico," Ethan continued. "Someone who lost everything in his investment scheme. They found emails threatening him, saying they'd make him pay." Mom snatched the papers, her face going pale. "But that means—" "It means Zoe's little revenge plot got Dad killed," Ethan spat. "How does that feel, sis?" "Still feel like justice." I grabbed the papers, scanning them quickly. "These threats, they're dated before I exposed anything. Before I even knew about the fraud. Because Dad knew it was coming," Mom whispered. "He knew they were closing in. That's why he—" She trailed off, realization dawning in her eyes. "Why he what?" I demanded. "Why he transferred everything to my name," she said quietly. "The house, the accounts. He made me complicit to protect himself." Ethan's phone buzzed. His face went ashen as he read the message. The police found more documents in Dad's room. Records of other schemes going back years. Names, dates. "Mom, your name is all over them." "Because he set me up," she breathed. "He knew. He knew they were coming for him, so he made sure I'd take the fall." The perfect family facade cracked completely. Mom sank onto her bed, decades of denial crumbling. "Ifut. I thought if we just kept up appearances, everything would be fine. If we just looked perfect." "Well, I paid the price," I said. "Me and Grandma Evelyn and all those other people." "I'm sorry," she whispered, and for the first time in my life, I believed her. I was so worried about how we looked that I couldn't see what we'd become. Ethan slumped against the wall. "So what do we do now?" I pulled out my phone, showing them the email I'd received that morning. "I got into art school. Full scholarship for photography." "How?" Ethan asked. "My portfolio. Pictures of our perfect family falling apart." The judges called it a raw exploration of facade versus reality. Mom let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. "Using our destruction to build your future. That's fitting." "Maybe that's all we can do now," I said. "Stop pretending. Start over. Build something real for once." Ethan straightened up. "I got the job offer. Nothing fancy, just bartending. But it's honest work. And I'm pleading guilty," Mom added quietly. "No more hiding." We stood there in the ruins of our perfect life, 3 survivors of a disaster of our own making. The revenge I'd wanted had turned into something else entirely, not justice exactly, but truth. Painful, necessary truth. "We're not going to be okay for a while," I said finally. "But maybe we can be real." Mom nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Real is better than perfect." Through the window, I could see the auction signs going up in our front yard. The end of one story, maybe, but also the beginning of another. 6 months later, I stood in a small gallery, surrounded by black and white photographs. My first exhibition, Facades, was drawing to a close. The images told our story. The perfect family photos juxtaposed with the aftermath of our collapse, empty rooms in our old house, Mom in her prison jumpsuit, Ethan's sleeping in his car. It's brutal, a voice said behind me. I turned to find Ethan, looking different in his bartender's uniform. But honest. Thanks for letting me use the photos. He shrugged, hands in his pockets. Least I could do after everything. We stood before the centerpiece, a split image. On one side, our family at his wedding. On the other, the 4 empty chairs at Mom's sentencing. 3 years, he said quietly. Could have been worse. She took responsibility. Finally, I adjusted the frame slightly. Have you visited? Once. She looks different. Smaller, without all the designer clothes and makeup. But more real somehow. Grandma Evelyn appeared beside us, leaning on her cane. Your mother called yesterday. She's teaching other inmates about financial literacy, trying to help them avoid the mistakes she made. Ironic, Ethan muttered. Or fitting, I countered. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find your purpose. A young woman approached us, notebook in hand. Miss Caldwell? I'm from the university paper. Would you say your work is about revenge? Getting back at your family. Before I could answer, another voice cut in. It's about truth. We all turned. Mom stood there in simple clothes, her hair unstyled, a guard discreetly waiting by the door. She'd been granted temporary release for the exhibition. Mom. Ethan stepped forward, then stopped, unsure. The court approved a few hours, she explained. I needed to see this. To see what we really were. She moved through the gallery, studying each photo. Stopping at one of Dad's empty office, she touched the frame gently. He never would have changed, would he? No, Grandma Evelyn said firmly. But you did. Mom turned to me, her eyes wet. Your father died running from the truth. I'm leaving Quifet. It's harder, but better. Why did you come? I asked. Because this, she gestured to the photos, isn't about revenge anymore. It's about rebuilding. And I wanted to be part of that, even if just for a moment. Ethan cleared his throat. I got promoted to head bartender. Small steps, but honest ones, Mom finished, smiling slightly. The gallery was closing. The guard approached, indicating it was time. Mom hugged Ethan awkwardly, then turned to me. I'm proud of you, she said. Not for destroying our facade, but for building something real from the ruins. After she left, I sold the final photograph, the empty chairs at her sentencing. The buyer, an art collector, asked what the piece meant. It's about absence, I said, but also presence. Sometimes what's missing shows you what matters most. Later that night, at Grandma Evelyn's house, my home now, I found a letter from Mom. Inside was a familiar photo, me at age 5, before the perfect family facade took over. On the back she'd written, keep showing the truth. It hurts, but it heals. I pinned it to my wall, next to my art school acceptance letter and the newspaper clipping about Dad's death. Not as trophies of revenge, but as reminders that sometimes justice comes in unexpected ways. Ethan texted me later. Mom looked good. Different, but good. Maybe we all needed to fall apart to put ourselves back together, right? I thought about responding, but instead just looked out my window at the night sky. The perfect family was gone, but something more authentic was taking its place. Not whole yet, maybe never would be, but real. And real, I learned, was better than perfect any day.